Hi there, everyone. Coming up on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, we'll get you all of your latest news and information from the state capitol and CDE. Plus, we're taking a deep dive into the governor's budget proposal. We've got a GR roundtable today to give us the inside information on the budget, plus your opportunity to ask them questions about the budget and find out specifics about what impacts your students the most. The ACSA Legislative Lunch Break starts now. It is just a little bit past 1 o'clock here. Welcome to the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break on a Wednesday. I'm Naj and Edgar, ACSA Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. You'll notice I'm solo. We'll tell you about that in just a moment. But go ahead and jump onto our chat today. Say hello. Let us know where you're watching from. Edgar is currently sitting at an airport in San Diego. He is not able to find a location in San Diego's airport that is social distanced and quiet. He just missed the security checkpoint. So Edgar is not here today. I am solo with you today, but so happy to have you with us. And we are going to hope that our internet signal does not die out with our guest today like it did the last time I was solo, when our one guest that was here kept falling in and out. Want to say hello to Ellen Wheeler, Gary Reller, Thomas, Brianna, Jennifer, and Sunny. So good to have you guys with us here on the show today. A little bit later on, we are going to have Diana Vu and Megan Baier from ACSA's Governmental Relations Department. We're going to break down the governor's budget proposal, which of course came out last Monday, give you an opportunity to ask specific questions, because obviously the budget proposal quite deep, and they have some answers for you. Just want to bring up a couple of news items, and I'm hoping that some of you could respond to this. Obviously, we have talked a lot about staff absences and student absences in the face of COVID-19 and the Omicron variant. And we're hearing more stories about school districts having to cancel classes or postpone classes as a result of staff shortages. We got a couple of notes out of EdSource today. EdSource reporting that the Delano Union Elementary School District sent a letter to parents encouraging them to have a plan in place for child care because the district could have to shift to virtual learning as a result of these staffing shortages. A letter to parents in Bakersfield City School District warned that staffing shortages are strained. Over in Sac City Unified, Superintendent Jorge Aguilar was asking for volunteers and substitute teachers. He said that district staff is stretched so thin that principals and district administrators have been teaching in classrooms. Palo Alto Unified Superintendent Don Austin issued a similar call. Don watches our show quite regularly. So Don, if you want to jump into our chat and let us know how things are looking in your district. And for all of you, we'd like to know some of the successes and challenges that you are experiencing in your school district. So go ahead and drop into the chat. Let us know what's happening over there. I want to say again, hi to Mike and Esther, Donna, Laura, Dutch with us as well. I want to just give one piece of good news before we start talking about budget. Shout out to Tom McHale, the principal over at Davis Senior High School, and his entire staff. As reported this morning from the NBC affiliate here in Sacramento, one of their students, Apurva Mishra, scored a perfect 1,600 on his SATs, placing him in the 99th percentile in the nation among test takers. So congratulations to him for that 1,600 on his SATs, and to the team over at Davis Senior High School for that. Again, we're going to talk budget. So go ahead and jump onto our chat. If you have questions related to the budget, go ahead and drop those in right now. I do see some comments about what's happening right now. Michelle Murphy, we're at 20% staff shortage, 70% attendance for students. 90% of our bus drivers have COVID. Wow, that's a big number there. Mark Campbell, our loyal viewer for Calaveras Unified, staffing shortages led to shift to independent study virtual learning at our middle school for 3 days this week. My goodness. This is obviously not new information, to all of you. But again, go ahead and jump into our chat and our comment section. Let us know what's happening in your communities. Let's talk budget. Let's go ahead and let's flip subject matter here. As you know, last Monday, Governor Newsom released his budget for the 2022-2023 budget year. Expected surplus of $45.7 billion allows for the Prop 98 guarantee to be at $102 billion, which is $8.2 billion higher compared to last year. That works itself out to $15,261 per pupil spending. There's also a 5.33% COLA for LCFF. And then, of course, there's a little bit more in there for COVID relief, declining enrollment, independent study, transitional kindergarten, among a number of other programs. So let's go ahead and bring in our guests right now, Baier and Diana Vu, advocates from ACSA's Governmental Relations Department. Megan and Diana, it is so great to have you here on the show. Thank you for jumping in. We can collectively, the three of us, start writing down all of the ways we will haze Edgar the next time he is here. But again, so good to have you guys on the show. Megan, let's start with you. It's been about a week since the budget release. What are some of the themes that have emerged over that time in response to the budget? What do we believe might become some of the bigger points of contention as we move into the budget process?
Yeah, thanks, Naj. Well, I mean, I guess I'll start by saying, as I guess is on theme for, the last 2 years, we think there's a fair amount of uncertainty as it comes to revenues. The numbers, like you highlighted, look great, $102 billion for Prop 98. But the estimates that the governor is using for those this proposal were based before the Omicron surge. So depending what happens over the next couple of months, hopefully the economy stays strong and we won't see any adjustments down. But there is the governor did kind of caution that we could see some changes in the estimates. Other big pieces, you hit on the COLA. This is a historic COLA, 5.3%. It's also applying to several of the big categoricals outside of LCFF, including special ed. While it is a very large COLA when compared to the historical average, it's actually lower than inflation, which is a concern. Inflation's hovering around 6.7% is the last estimate that I saw. Additionally, budget makes a big investment to special ed, coupled with some policy changes. The governor also is continuing to implement some of the big major new programs that he included in the budget last year. So these are things that many of you are probably aware of, and they're going to actually start being requirements next year. So he's going to continue to phase in transitional kindergarten, the expanded learning program, which is essentially after school, and then also intercession program that's getting a fair amount of funding, is going to start being a requirement next year, as well as universal meals. And then I think another big issue that I see some comments on already: declining enrollment, the attendance issues that Naj was talking about in the beginning of the show. The governor acknowledges that the pandemic is creating huge absenteeism issues, for very legitimate reasons in many cases, as well as staffing challenges. He included a proposal to create a 3-year rolling average, which essentially would soften the decline in revenue that you would all see. So, it might not be enough for what we're now seeing right now in January, but it certainly puts us in the right, takes us in the right direction.
And just want to remind all of our viewers, if you have budget questions, we're going to jump on to a lot of topics here. So just be prepared for that. But if you have questions or comments, go ahead and drop those into the chat. We've got our experts here to be able to dive into some of the particulars from the budget. Diana, let me ask you about CDPH and OSHA. There have been some changes to the CDPH guidance for schools, as well as changes to the OSHA rules. What are the biggest developments on that front as we sit here today?
Sure, absolutely. So the Cal OSHA guidance has been updated to reflect the CDPH isolation and quarantine timelines and adopted through the emergency temporary standards for employees returning to work as of Friday, January 14th. I think we're expecting changes to what constitutes to fully vaccinated to reflect the boosted status, but that hasn't changed yet. 3 things I do want to point out, though, is 1, employees returning to work after a positive test or had close contact exposure need to socially distance and mask up for 14 days, regardless of booster status at the workplace. 2, also regardless of booster status, if there are no symptoms, employees can continue working after close contact. Unvaccinated employees should test 3 to 5 days after exposure and are boosted are 5 days. CDPH guidance is slightly more strict on the unboosted but booster eligible individuals needing to be quarantined after close exposure. Number 3 is employees testing must be observed by an employer or proctor. They cannot be self-certified testing results.
Megan, let me ask you about, we've talked about guidance and the move to independent study and the virtual movement and possible school closures. Our team has been putting out some guidance on options related to school closures. We did that last week. Can you remind our members out there about the waiver process and what are some of the steps that need to be taken if there is the schools are forced to be closed?
Right. Yeah. And the legal framework is a little bit different this year than it was last year. So there isn't the legal authority to shift in the same way to distance learning like there was this year, but there are some ways, that folks can make it work. So in the event that you have a staffing shortage where you cannot staff classrooms safely, you can seek a J13 waiver. However, to qualify for the waiver, you have to have a plan to offer independent study. That means even if you received a waiver from your county office that you don't have to have an independent study program this year, if you want to seek this J13 for a staffing shortage, you do still need to have a plan to offer independent study. And you also have had to sought help from your county office or the superintendent of public instruction to see if they have any way to help you out. I think the other, kind of like way that districts can, and I think we've seen some districts utilize this, is if you have built-in days, kind of known as like smoke days or snow days, if you have those built in, you can utilize those to shut down for a couple of days or however many you have built in, as long as you're maintaining that 180-day school year.
I want to remind all of our viewers, if you are on YouTube or watching us on Facebook, subscribe, make sure that you are getting the alerts by liking and subscribing to our videos. Diana, let me ask you, a trend we are seeing in Sacramento right now is a number of elected officials are deciding not to return to the office that they currently hold. Can we try to explain why this looks like greater turnover right now than we have seen in the past?
Yes, absolutely. So it's a very interesting time right now. And if I were to nerd out, I would say historic. There are 2 things at play right now. First is Prop 28, which was passed by the voters in 2012. So this limits the time legislators can serve in office to a strict 12 years. Previously, legislators would have been able to max out in their current house at a much lower number. This resulted in members jumping to the other house when given the opportunity or terming out at 6 or 8 years. Now, members can serve in a single house or a combination of both houses, Assembly and Senate, for 12 years only. The first class of 12-year members are about to reach their limit in 2024. I think this has triggered a lot of emotions for people. I think members are thinking about what they'll do next and wanting to leave on a high note. If we look at former Assembly member Frazier, who resigned in December, he chose to leave after he accomplished what was probably his life's work, which was to reform the disability services within the Department of Social Service. Another example is Assemblymember Gonzalez, who resigned earlier this month. She resigned earlier this month while she was still chair of the powerful Appropriations Committee. That would not have been guaranteed if she continued to stay until she was termed out. She might not have kept that position. The second factor is redistricting. Redistricting is when the district boundary lines are redrawn by nonpartisan committee. This happens every 10 years. So this is the first time for these members. This is either a nightmare or a new opportunity. If we look at the nightmare scenario, we see members are now being put in a position to run against their colleagues. One district has been redrawn to include 4 different assembly members. And as we've seen, some have decided not to run for re-election. Other members have a completely different district makeup. Assembly member Cunningham, for example, has currently a moderate district that leans red. His district now is very blue, and it would be a big uphill battle for him to be reelected, which I'm sure is why he chose not to run for reelection. On the opportunity side, some lines have also affected Congress. So a lot of state legislators are taking advantage of the congressional resignations and running for Congress instead. So I hope this is helpful.
Yes, and folks, again, if you have questions for Megan and Diana, go ahead and jump in to our chat, leave a message there. Megan, we mentioned about staffing shortages. I talked about Mark's comment and Michelle's comment. We did have another one. Let me bring that up. Give me just a moment. Oh, from Rob Roberts, and I believe Rob is from San Bernardino City School District. He said 21% of certificated absences unfilled daily. Again, we want to remind you, if you have some data respective to your district and any of the staffing shortages that you currently have there, go ahead and drop that into our chat. But there you go. Rob says 21% of certificated absences unfilled daily. Megan, let me ask you about that governor executive order that was aimed at school staffing shortages. What were the highlights and what did we learn from that last week?
Yeah, so the governor released an executive order last week trying to lower the barriers to get staff into the classrooms. The 2 main buckets that it was focused on were retirees and substitute teachers. So for retirees, the big change is they have suspended the post-retirement earnings limit for retirees to return to work. That suspension is going to actually take place retroactively. So from July 1st of 2021 up till March 31st of 2022. So that should open up some opportunities to bring back retirees for longer periods of time, maybe some folks that have already maxed out under the old rules. They also are trying to simplify some of the paperwork requirements. They've eliminated a lot of the STRS paperwork that retirees usually have to do. And they've also opened up the ability for a bigger pool of retirees to come back. Previously, those who had received an incentive to retire were not eligible. This executive order changes that and lifts that restriction. On the substitute teacher front, the length of the cumulative days that a sub can serve in a classroom has been lifted. It's been lifted all the way to 120 days. I will note this is for general education teachers only. Also, the County Office of Education no longer has to submit applications and fees to the Commission on Teacher Credentialing in order to issue the temporary certificate. The county office can self-certify and issue the temporary county certificate. Self-certification requires a bachelor's degree, fingerprinting, and the basic skills test. This is going to be good for a full year. Additionally, student teachers no longer need a certificated educator present to count for instructional minutes. And then just one important note, the district or county office does need to make a declaration of their staffing shortage and keep it in on file in writing in order to qualify for these exemptions.
And Alan and Lizette, we see your questions in there, so we'll go ahead and address those in just a second. Diana, let me change topics here. There's some questions and controversy about the state's potential new framework. Can you bring us up to speed on what we're hearing on that and what might come next?
Sure, absolutely. So as you know, the framework has gained a lot of attention and will continue to get a lot of attention as it moves through the process. In developing the framework, the committee was attempting to fix the fact that the majority of K-12 students are not meeting grade level benchmarks, particularly Black and Latino students, are underrepresented in accelerated programs as well. Proponents and the committee that developed the framework believe that low math attainment is due to structural inequalities and influenced by racism and sexism. This plays into opponents like fear of critical race theory, that it has encroached onto math as well. The second controversial piece is that the first draft removed the tracking of student math skills. So students are all grouped together all the way through the 10th grade. But because of all this controversy and the board's comments as well, the ITC board's comments, they have committed to including guidance on accelerated programs. So the next step of the framework is to go through, it's currently going through the second revision right now, which has not yet been released. When the framework is released, the public will have 60 days to comment. The public comment period is set to start between January and April. So the second version cannot be released any later than the beginning of March. And by July, the state board will take action on it at their meeting. And if anyone has any comments or questions, a lot of comments, please send them my way as well. I'm trying to gather as much as possible on this.
Let me ask you guys a couple of questions here, and feel free for either of you to jump in to provide an answer if we have an answer for it. Alan Miller asks, is there any more scuttlebutt regarding hold harmless? Are we hearing anything related to hold harmless?
Yes, there's a lot of chatter, actually. There's conversation about hold harmless. There's conversation about completely changing how we calculate ADA and moving to an enrollment-based system. There's conversation about, some sort of, stopgap to address, the very unique but severe absenteeism that we're seeing this year. So I would say at this point, everything is on the table. And I'm not sure, we're not sure what direction it's gonna go, but legislators are certainly hearing from you all, and I would encourage you to keep letting them know what you're seeing at your school sites.
Question from Lizette. Any traction on increase to base funding?
I'll take that one again. Yes, I think there is. We see this. We've seen a good sized COLA. I think there's a lot of talk in the, among stakeholders and among the field that we need a larger base increase. So ACSA has already been lobbying for that. We will continue to work with our coalition partners to do so. But, like mentioned before, the 5% COLA is nice, but it's not even enough to cover inflation at this point. So we'll be continuing to work on that piece.
And Megan, they're not actually like raising their hand to have you answer all of these questions, but it seems like this is another one that would just designate for you, since you talked about the executive order. Is there an expectation that there will be an executive order or legislation to provide COVID sick leave? That coming in from Steve Hovey. Have you heard anything about that? Diana, have you heard anything about that?
I have not. But, this is just the beginning of the legislative session. So I mean, there could be a lot of things thrown at us in a bit. Megan, have you though?
I know that Labor has been working towards this. They were working to get, additional sick leave last year, and it didn't happen. I'm not sure with this Omicron surge if that's going to change the politics of it. So I think it is something that's being worked on, but it's not clear yet whether anything is going to materialize.
Stephen Hovey asked the question, what is the allowable duration for special education substitute teachers, given that the 120 days is for general education?
So to my knowledge, there's been no changes made to current law as what's allowable for special education teachers. The flexibilities have only been made for general education teachers. So I don't have the code section off the top of my head, but I want to say that the 30-day limit is still in place.
Yeah, Rob Roberts puts in the comment here, need immediate relief, help with special education substitutes, the most challenging lives need the most support. So that kind of goes back into that. Sheldon Smith asked the question, 3 year rolling ADA average with a big question mark. I believe asking specifically about ADA average and if there's going to be that rolling number. Megan, I would assume this is in your wheelhouse.
Yes. Yes, Sheldon, that's right. Hi there. So the governor's proposed a 3-year rolling average, or you can use your greater of prior year or prior year. So it should help a lot of districts soften the decline that they're seeing. The calculation will also like if you're prior year, if you're one of the few districts that are growing, the calculation will reflect that as well.
All right, I'm going to put you two on the spot here because something tells me Edgar is sitting in the airport outside the gate for his plane watching the show. Can you give him a hard time about not being here for this, knowing that he was supposed to be in the chair at no later than 12:55? Diana, I'm going to start with you. The next time you see Edgar, do you have something planned to give him a hard time about this?
Well, I just don't understand. He could have worn a mask and done this still. Just not committed to all of you.
Lack of commitment. Megan, what about you?
Yeah, I know. I think a Zoom program with him in a mask would have gone really well. So we definitely missed you, Edgar.
Nothing quite like that terminal over at Lindbergh Field in San Diego. Megan Baier and Diana Vu, advocates from ACSA's Governmental Relations Department. Megan and Diana, so great to have you here on the show. Honored to see you, and we'll see you next time. And folks, want to let you know, we are planning to have our show next Wednesday, whether Edgar wants to be here or not. We will actually, both Edgar and I will be over at ACSA Superintendent Symposium. We will be live with our show from Superintendent Symposium. If you are at Soup Symposium, definitely come by and say hello. So we will be back on the air next Wednesday, 1 p.m. with a live and interactive edition of the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Folks, thank you so much for being with us here today on the lunch break. We will see you next Wednesday, 1 p.m. Have a great rest of the day, great rest of the week, and we'll see you next time.